Hi Melrose, I'm Mayor Jen Grigoraitis, and this is the Melrose Minute, where we bring you news you can use from City Hall. And I'm thrilled today to be joined by Vonnie Reese, our city engineer in the DPW department. Hi Vonnie.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
And today we're going to talk about something that a lot of Melrosians are passionate about, which is our roads.
Yes, they are very passionate about their roads.
So can you tell us a little bit about the road projects that we have going on in the city and how you as the city engineer with your team prioritize which road gets paved when?
Yes, I'd love to tell you about our road program. So we take a very measured and thoughtful approach to our road program. Every 3 years we do an assessment of every single road in town, all the public roads, and that process involves driving every single street and taking note of both the density and the frequency of defects in the road. So potholes, cracks, alligator cracking, spalling, rutting, that type of thing. It's all put into a matrix with different scores assigned. And then we also look at the rideability of each road too. And that factors into our overall ranking of each street in the city. We do the streets in segments from intersection to intersection. So one portion of a street might be better than others. And then we start the program with that road ranking. We look at the worst ranked streets in the city. We just finished our annual program at the end of 2023, so we have a brand new road ranking to go by. We will be getting our road ranking map up on the website so that people can see how their road fared in our system. And then once we have the road rankings, we sit down and we look at what other infrastructure needs to be dealt with. We don't want to be put in a position where underground infrastructure a couple of years down the road needs to be replaced or fixed, and we've just paved the road. So we coordinate with the gas company on their gas mains, and then we look at the city-owned water mains and sewer mains. And many of those mains are 100 plus years old. So we've done extensive programs on both the water and the sewer side to evaluate that infrastructure. And we know what should be prioritized in terms of replacements. So typically, from start to finish, we're looking at 1 year for gas, 1 year for water or sewer, and then a third year for roads. But then once we go into a neighborhood, after 3 years, we're gone, and hopefully none of that infrastructure will need to be touched again. So that is, in a nutshell, how we evaluate what needs to be done and how we prioritize what needs to be done.
So not surprising that a group of engineers use a lot of data points to make very thorough and intentional decisions. So it sounds like a lot goes in to deciding which roads get done when. You mentioned rideability, and so I just wanted to have you talk a little bit about when we look at our roads and sidewalks and we talk about users, we're not just talking about cars, right?
That's correct. So in 2016, Melrose adopted a complete streets policy. And what that means, well, it means two things. It means we're eligible for state funding because we have a complete streets policy.
Love to be eligible for state funding.
And we have used complete streets grants in several places around town to do roadway and sidewalk and mobility improvements. But the second point is using that approach when we go to address a roadway program, we look at mobility for all users. So cyclists, people pushing baby carriages, pedestrians, kids on skateboards. We look at safety, improving safety for people using the streets who are not in a vehicle, and also for the vehicles themselves too. So an example of that would be the bump outs on Main Street that were installed at the crosswalks. It makes it easier for the pedestrian to safely cross at the crosswalk, but it also makes them more visible to the vehicles too. So it's a little bit of a win-win. you know, a community like Melrose has a lot of different users of our infrastructure, and so we want to make it as safe as possible for everyone.
Well, and I think it's great to hear that it is both, you know, qualitative, hard data, the numbers, the measurements, and also then the, you know, the quantitative quality of life. How are people using our roads? What does that look like for different users? And that you're finding a way to balance that when you produce your very fancy, very colorful map ranking all the roads. Can you talk a little bit about private ways and what does or doesn't happen with those? Because I think we actually get a lot of questions from residents about when will their private way be paved?
Yes. So there are many segments, probably I think over 100 street segments in Melrose that are classified as private ways. And what that means is when the homes were built or the lots were developed, the city never took ownership of that street. Some of these are not more than, you know, a couple hundred feet long, only serving one or two houses, and some are a little bit longer with larger developments. What that means is the people who own the property abutting the street own the street. The city will snowplow, the city will pick up trash, the city will repair potholes, but we don't have ownership of the street to do more extensive repairs. And we do the things that we do for public safety, for sanitation, obviously. But when owners of private ways come to us and say, my street needs to be repaved, unfortunately, the hard answer is that they own the street, and collectively, everybody who abuts the street owns the street.
I think it's great to put that clarification out there for folks who are often wondering whether they live on a private way or not. Now, you've talked about what sounds like a pretty big undertaking, thinking about what's happening on the road, thinking about what's happening underneath the road that needs to be repaired. Big undertakings are not cheap. So how do we as a city try to fund our road repairs?
So the road repairs themselves, we have, well, as I mentioned, we try to get at whatever we can for grants. And we also have Chapter 90, which is a state-funded program. Our Chapter 90 allotment is based on how many miles of public roads we have. And we apply every year to the state for that. And then we do, typically every 3 years, we apply for a road, or we ask City Council's blessing to put out a road bond. We just requested a $1.65 million road bond, which will help finance our both our construction and our design efforts over the next 3 years. So one of the key projects that we have in the chute right now is a Mass DOT Transportation Improvement Project, or a TIP project. The TIP project that we are in design right now for is for Lebanon Street, between Line Street and the Malden Town line. So it picks up where our previous TIP project ended on Lebanon Street. And of the $1.65 million that we asked for, $500,000 is going to be used towards the design of that TIP project. The way the TIP program works is the city needs to fund the design and bidding of the project, and then Mass DOT will fund all eligible costs for construction. So we are right now programmed to get $3.7 million from the state for construction, but we have to complete the design on our own dime. And so that's part of what that road bond will be going for. And then the remainder of that road bond will be spread out over the 3 years for construction projects.
Great. So a $500,000 investment on our end yields a $3.7 million investment from the state, which
correct.
I like that kind of math. So you mentioned, that we have many miles of road in the city. Can you talk about how many miles of road in Melrose and what it typically costs per mile to do what we call curb-to-curb replacement, where we fully pave the road?
Sure. We have 72 miles of roads, publicly owned roads in Melrose, and the back of the envelope estimate is $1 million a mile.
$1 million a mile. So that's
Right.
$72 million if we wanted to repave every single road in Melrose. And just for frame of
Correct.
reference for folks watching at home, our city budget for this year was $101 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So, you know, even, let's say a road lasts 20 or 30 years, we'll still, at $1 million a year or even $1.5 million, we'll still always be playing catch up, trying to keep up with the roads and the road conditions.
Right, and as we see the effects of climate change, I'm sure we're also seeing those effects on our roads. So it's great to know that you're all out there assessing and adjusting in terms of what are the needs for repairs, given the limited funds that we have. Is there anything else that you want to talk about as it relates to our road program?
Well, I'm going to go back to the grants again.
Please do.
And we've done a lot of work over this past year. We actually spent $1.6 million on our road program this last year because we got ARPA funds. The city was able to get ARPA funds, and that funded a good chunk of our sidewalk work that we did this last year. We got a $77,000 grant from the state to do the improvements at the intersection of Vinton and West Emerson at Cedar Park. And then over the course of the last few years, we've had some smaller grants, complete streets, that type of thing that has come up that we've been able to use to improve accessibility, wheelchair ramps, safety. And we also got a grant from the state last year to buy traffic calming equipment, and we've used that to run a couple of pilot programs to see if we can try to slow down the speeds in some of the residential neighborhoods.
I think everybody is on board with that. It's a complaint that we hear a lot. So thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of this community. There's a lot that goes into keeping our roads functional and safe for everyone, and we really appreciate it. I do want to take a moment before we close to remind folks that if you do have a pothole or sidewalk repair that you want to have logged for the city, you can do that right on the city website. If you click the link for DPW service, that will bring you to a form where you can fill in your request, and it will go directly to the DPW city yard to get logged and taken care of. We really appreciate when folks do that, and also if you can provide photos of your concern, that helps a lot. So thank you again, Bonnie, for being here and for all the great work you do.